February 14th, 1943, Kasserine Pass, Tunisia. The morning sun cast harsh shadows across rocky terrain as elements of the German 21st Panzer Division advanced toward American positions. Inside a concealed observation post, Wehrmacht intelligence officer Hauptmann Friedrich Weber examined an unusual weapon captured 3 days earlier from retreating American forces. The tubular device, measuring roughly 5 feet in length, appeared almost comically primitive. Its open-ended steel construction suggested plumbing equipment more than military hardware. The wooden stock and crude trigger mechanism reinforced this impression of hasty improvisation. Yet the accompanying rockets told a different story. Their shaped charge warheads represented sophisticated explosive engineering. Weber had seen similar principles in German anti-tank weapons, but never delivered through anything this simple. His superiors in Berlin had demanded immediate analysis. Intelligence. Reports suggested American infantry were now carrying portable weapons capable of destroying tanks. If true, this represented a fundamental shift in armored warfare doctrine. Weber couldn't know it that morning, but the crude tube in his hands would force the Wehrmacht to completely reimagine tank tactics from Tunisia to Berlin. Within months, German engineers would reverse engineer this American innovation, scaling it up to create their own version. But the original lesson would remain unchanged. The nation that could arm every infantryman with tank-killing capability held a decisive advantage over the nation that couldn't. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The mathematics were elegantly devastating. The American launcher, designated M1 Bazooka, weighed 13 pounds. A German Tiger tank weighed 120,000 pounds. The cost disparity proved even more staggering. American factories manufactured each bazooka for approximately $18. One Tiger tank cost the Reich 250,000 Reichsmarks, yet that $18 tube could transform 250,000 Reichsmarks of precision engineering into burning wreckage with a single well-placed rocket. The weapon's captured examples had arrived at Wehrmacht testing facilities near Hillersleben in late 1942. Earlier specimens came from the Eastern Front, where Soviet forces had received American equipment through Lend-Lease. Additional examples were captured during Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of North Africa in November 1942. By February 1943, German ordnance experts had accumulated enough samples for comprehensive analysis. What they discovered both impressed and alarmed them. The shaped charge principle, using what scientists called the Monroe effect, focused explosive energy into a superheated jet capable of burning through armor like a cutting torch. 8 ounces of pentalite explosive could penetrate 5 inches of hardened steel. German engineers understood this physics intimately. They had developed similar shaped charge weapons, but the delivery system represented something entirely different. Traditional German anti-tank weapons fell into 2 categories: heavy guns requiring crews of 4 to 6 men, transported by vehicles or horses, or close assault weapons like magnetic mines that required soldiers to physically approach enemy tanks. Both approaches demanded specialized training, significant logistics, and accepted high casualty rates. The American bazooka transcended these limitations. 2 soldiers, 1 gunner and 1 loader, could operate the weapon effectively. No vehicles required for transport. No specialized training beyond basic marksmanship principles. The weapon could engage targets at ranges up to 300 yards, far beyond grenade-throwing distance, yet close enough for infantry to achieve practical accuracy. The rocket itself demonstrated American industrial pragmatism. The M6 rocket measured 2.36 inches in diameter and 19 inches in length. It weighed 3 4/10 pounds. The shaped charge warhead could theoretically penetrate 3 to 4 inches of armor plate, sufficient to threaten most German tanks' side and rear armor, though inadequate against Tiger frontal plates. German test reports noted the weapon's reliability problems. Many captured rockets failed to detonate. Others showed signs of poor quality control, with bent fins and inconsistent propellant charges. the electrical ignition system proved vulnerable to moisture. These deficiencies suggested the weapon had been rushed into production without adequate development time. Yet, even accounting for these flaws, German analysts recognized the strategic implications. American industrial capacity could mass-produce thousands of these weapons monthly. Training requirements were minimal. Every American infantry company could potentially field multiple bazooka teams. This represented a force multiplier that German production capacity simply couldn't match. The weapon's origins traced to American desperation. In 1942, the United States Army possessed essentially no effective infantry anti-tank weapons. Soldiers trained with doctrine inherited from World War I, emphasizing aggressive infantry attacks supported by artillery. The concept of mechanized warfare pioneered by German forces during the 1930s had caught American military planners completely unprepared. At Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, a small team of engineers worked frantically to address this deficiency. Captain Leslie Skinner, a career Army ordnance officer who had experimented with rockets since his teenage years, led the development effort. His colleague, Lieutenant Edward Uhl, a recent engineering graduate from Lehigh University, provided technical expertise. The breakthrough came through improvisation rather than systematic development. Uhl discovered a discarded steel tube at the proving ground that matched the diameter of newly developed M10-shaped charge grenades. The grenades could penetrate tank armor effectively, but weighed too much for soldiers to throw far enough to avoid the blast. Uhl realized the tube could serve as a launcher, with rocket propulsion providing range and the open rear venting exhaust safely away from the operator. Within weeks, they fabricated a working prototype. The first test firing occurred along the Potomac River, with Uhl personally shouldering the crude launcher. The rocket flew true, landing hundreds of feet downrange. No violent recoil, no dangerous backblast, just a smooth launch and stable flight. The official demonstration in May 1942 proved decisive. General Gladion Marcus Barnes, Chief of Research and Development for Army Ordnance, witnessed the test personally. 5 different spigot mortar designs, all considered more promising than the tube launcher, failed to hit a moving tank target. Then Skinner shouldered the bazooka and hit repeatedly, with improvised wire coat hanger sights bent into shape that morning. Barnes immediately ordered 5,000 units into production. The weapon received its nickname when Barnes remarked it resembled Bob Burns's Bazooka, a novelty musical instrument popular with American radio audiences. The name stuck. Within 30 days, General Electric's Bridgeport facilities delivered the first production units. But North Africa proved the weapon's troubled combat debut. General Dwight Eisenhower discovered on invasion eve that troops lacked training. Many soldiers first saw bazookas when crates were pried open aboard transport ships. The M6 rockets proved catastrophically unreliable in desert conditions. Humidity absorbed by propellant charges caused inconsistent burning. Electrical contacts corroded in salt air. Many rockets failed to detonate. Others stuck in tubes and exploded, killing operators. These failures provided German intelligence with captured samples but led to rapid American improvements. The M1A1 variant addressed reliability issues with better rockets and improved electrical systems. The M6A3 rocket featured a blunt hemispherical nose preventing deflection off sloped armor, plus more reliable propellant and improved fusing. By Sicily's invasion in July 1943, American forces possessed a weapon that had evolved beyond its troubled beginnings. The 82nd Airborne Division's paratroopers trained extensively with improved bazookas before their combat jump. Colonel James Gavin, commanding the 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment, recognized the weapon's critical importance. His scattered paratroopers, dropped far from intended zones by high winds, would face German armor with minimal support. The bazooka represented their only practical anti-tank capability. The Battle of Biazza Ridge on July 11, 1943, provided the weapon's first major test against German heavy armor. Elements of the Hermann Göring Panzer Division, including Tiger tanks, attacked American positions. The initial engagements proved disappointing. Bazooka rockets struck Tiger frontal armor and bounced off harmlessly. The shaped charge warheads couldn't penetrate the massive frontal plates, but experienced non-commissioned officers remembered their training. Tigers were nearly invulnerable from the front, but side armor measured only 80 millimeters, and rear armor was even thinner. Tank tracks were vulnerable. Engine compartments could be targeted. As German tanks maneuvered to bring their 88mm main guns to bear, American bazooka teams shifted positions, seeking angle shots. Throughout the brutal day-long battle, bazookas contributed to the German attack's failure. Naval gunfire from destroyers proved decisive, and Sherman tank reinforcements arrived at critical moments. But bazooka teams demonstrated that trained infantry could engage heavy armor effectively when using proper tactics. The broader Sicily campaign, continuing through August 17, 1943, saw M1A1 bazookas credited with destroying 4 medium German tanks and 1 Tiger tank. The Tiger kill reportedly resulted from an extraordinarily lucky shot through the driver's vision slot, though specific documentation remains elusive. More importantly, German tank crews reported their experiences to intelligence officers. American infantry no longer fled at the sight of armor. They took up positions and fought back. Rockets came from windows, doorways, rubble piles. Multiple hits on a single tank were common. Even non-penetrating impacts had psychological effect. Crews could hear explosions, feel vibrations through armor, smell burning metal. They knew the next rocket might find a weak point. German intelligence compiled these reports into comprehensive assessments. The bazooka's true threat wasn't its technical specifications. The threat was ubiquity. By summer 1943, American rifle companies carried multiple bazookas. Marine divisions were authorized 172 bazookas each. Every infantry squad potentially possessed tank-killing capability. Wehrmacht doctrine, developed during the 1930s and proven in Poland, France, and Russia, emphasized armored spearheads operating independently with minimal infantry support. Speed and shock action were fundamental. Tanks charged aggressively, exploiting breakthroughs before enemy forces could react. This Blitzkrieg approach had conquered nations. The bazooka rendered these tactics suicidal. Urban combat became impossible without massive infantry screens. Night operations, once a German specialty, became too dangerous. Tanks that had charged forward, Poland now advanced cautiously, constantly scanning for bazooka teams. The essence of German mechanized warfare, speed and independent operation, was negated. Statistics revealed the transformation. In France, during 1940, German tanks achieved 10-to-1 kill ratios against Allied armor. By late 1943 in Italy, German tanks facing bazooka-equipped Americans approached 1-to-1 losses. The Wehrmacht's primary advantage had evaporated. The psychological impact cut deeper than tactical changes. Nazi ideology promoted technological sophistication as evidence of Aryan superiority. Complex Tigers and Panthers supposedly demonstrated German genius. Yet American pragmatism, mass-producing simple, effective weapons, proved superior to German perfectionism. This philosophical crisis manifested in tank crew morale. Crews trained as predators became prey. Veterans who had terrorized Europe now spoke constantly about bazookas being everywhere with no defense. German response proved predictable. Engineers immediately began reverse engineering captured bazookas. By late 1943, German troops received the Raketen-Panzerbuchse 43, nicknamed the Panzerschreck or Tank Terror. The weapon scaled the American design from 60 mm to 88 mm, matching German artillery calibers. The Panzerschreck could penetrate 160 to 230 mm of armor, roughly double the bazooka's capability. But the weapon suffered from significant drawbacks that revealed German inability to match American production philosophy. The larger rocket continued burning for 2 meters after leaving the muzzle, creating an enormous backblast requiring operators to wear protective gear, including heavy ponchos, gloves, and gas masks. The weapon weighed 24 pounds compared to the M1A1's 13 pounds. The massive smoke signature revealed firing positions to every enemy within visual and range. Most critically, Germany produced approximately 300,000 Panzerschrecks during the war. America produced nearly 500,000 bazookas. The production disparity embodied each nation's fundamental approach. Germany sought technical perfection in limited numbers. America sought adequate capability in overwhelming quantities. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring, commanding German forces in Italy, acknowledged the crisis in December 1943. His report to Berlin stated that American rocket launchers had imposed unacceptable losses, requiring fundamental reconsideration of combined arms warfare. The weapon had given American infantry formidable confidence that German armor could no longer crush through willpower alone. Training manuals demonstrated the transformation starkly. The 1940 Wehrmacht Panzer Manual devoted one paragraph to infantry anti-tank weapons, dismissing them as minor threats. The 1944 revision devoted an entire chapter to countering rocket launchers, with detailed procedures for maintaining distance, avoiding urban areas, and requiring constant infantry support. The human cost appeared in countless personal accounts. Young Americans who never imagined fighting tanks became hunters. Farm boys, factory workers, students all became tank killers with minimal training. German memoirs consistently cite the bazooka as the most transformative weapon they faced. Not Allied tanks or artillery or air power, but the infantry's rocket launcher. The Italian campaign demonstrated the bazooka's evolution from emergency weapon to tactical cornerstone. In mountainous terrain around Monte Cassino, where Allied forces battered themselves against German defensive lines for months beginning in January 1944, bazooka teams operated with sniper-like patience. Some waited days for perfect shots against German armor moving through narrow mountain passes. American soldiers discovered vulnerabilities German engineers never intended. Exhaust grills on tank rear decks could be targeted, allowing rockets to penetrate into engine compartments. Turret rings, where the rotating turret met the hull, represented weak points where armor plates joined imperfectly. Even Tigers had seams where 3.5 inches of protection became vulnerable gaps. The tactics evolved through brutal experience. Bazooka teams learned to work in pairs. The first shooter targeted tracks for immobilization. The second sought weak points on the disabled vehicle. White phosphorus rockets, while lacking armor penetration, could blind crews and force abandonment. The burning phosphorus created toxic smoke that infiltrated through ventilation systems, making tanks uninhabitable. Terrain became weaponized. Teams positioned themselves in second-story windows, firing down onto thinner top armor. They hid in rubble until tanks passed, then fired into vulnerable rear plates. They used artillery craters and stone walls for concealment, waiting until German armor entered killing zones before revealing positions. German countermeasures proved largely futile. Maintaining distance from American infantry was impractical in confined Italian terrain. Infantry escorts slowed tank operations to walking pace, negating mobility advantages. Prohibitions on entering towns paralyzed movement through the peninsula's countless villages. Every adaptation consumed resources Germany couldn't afford. The psychological warfare dimension intensified throughout 1944. German tank crews developed symptoms consistent with combat stress: constant anxiety, sleep disturbances, hypervigilance. Medical officers reported tankers seeing bazooka teams everywhere, even when none existed. Many requested transfers to other duties. The Panzer Force's psychological foundation crumbled under sustained pressure. Knowing captured bazookas could transform resistance movements, Germans obsessively tracked every captured weapon. Intelligence reports detailed American supply procedures, attempting to intercept bazookas before they reached partisan forces. One bazooka could elevate resistance groups from nuisance to serious threat. French resistance fighters, Italian partisans, and Yugoslav guerrillas desperately sought bazookas as ultimate force multipliers. American innovation accelerated continuously. The M9 bazooka, introduced in October 1943, featured a two-piece design that disassembled for easier transport, crucial for airborne operations. The assembled length measured 61 inches, disassembled just 31.5 inches. Metal furniture replaced wood, reducing weight and improving durability. Most significantly, a new Magnavox trigger magneto replaced the troublesome battery ignition system, eliminating countless malfunctions that had plagued earlier models. The improved M9A1, introduced in June 1944, became the most numerous variant. Production totaled 277,819 units by war's end. This model featured better coupling mechanisms for the launch tubes and refined sighting systems. The General Electric aperture sight was replaced in September 1944 with a Polaroid optical reflector sight, improving accuracy significantly. Production statistics underscored German futility. While the Reich struggled producing 100 Tigers monthly, consuming enormous resources for each vehicle, American factories produced thousands of bazookas. By war's end, nearly 500,000 bazookas existed across all variants. America could lose 50 bazookas per German tank destroyed and maintain decisive advantage. The weapon influenced strategic planning beyond immediate tactics. German offensives increasingly avoided urban areas where bazookas excelled. Supply lines required heavier protection, consuming infantry needed elsewhere. Tank crews demanded more infantry support, straining already inadequate German manpower. Every adaptation multiplied resource consumption Germany couldn't sustain. Wehrmacht intelligence reports from early 1944 revealed the extent of doctrinal transformation. Tank tactics bore no resemblance to the terrorizing Blitzkrieg of 1940. Armor moved in tight formations with extensive infantry screens. Urban areas were bypassed entirely when possible. Night operations ceased almost completely. The bazooka imposed constraints negating every early war advantage German armor had enjoyed. Captured German officers' testimony revealed complete psychological transformation. Officers trained in armored warfare superiority told their Tigers were invincible, found American bazookas everywhere. Tank crews went from hunters to hunted, carrying a crushing psychological burden. One panzer commander, interrogated after capture in February 1944, stated that every hedgerow might conceal death. Every village window might frame a rocket launcher. Every rubble pile might hide a two-man team capable of destroying 60 tons of German engineering. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. As spring 1944 approached and Allied forces prepared for France's invasion, Germans recognized thousands of bazookas would accompany assault forces. Every hedgerow in Normandy's bocage country became a potential firing position. Every village became a potential killing ground. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel ordered specific obstacles constructed, channeling Allied forces away from favorable bazooka positions. The weapon achieved something remarkable before Operation Overlord even commenced: psychological defeat of German armor forces. Tank crews who had charged confidently across Poland, France, and into Russia now advanced hesitantly, constantly watching for smoke trails that signaled incoming rockets. The mental battle was already lost before the first American soldier stepped onto Normandy's beaches. June 6, 1944. D-Day. American forces storming Omaha Beach carried bazookas ashore in the first waves. Under intense German fire, with men dying by hundreds in the surf and on sand, bazooka teams advanced toward German strongpoints. The weapons proved crucial for reducing fortified positions that had pinned down entire companies. Engineers used bazookas to blast paths through obstacles. Infantry used them to suppress machine gun bunkers long enough for flamethrower teams to close distance. In the weeks following D-Day, as Allied forces pushed through Norman bocage country, bazookas became essential for dealing with German armor ambushing from concealed positions. The thick hedgerows of Normandy created a claustrophobic battlefield where combat occurred at ranges measured in yards, not hundreds of yards. Visibility was severely limited. German tanks could hide in sunken lanes, appearing suddenly at point-blank range. In this environment, the bazooka's portable firepower proved life-saving. Infantry advancing through hedgerows knew they possessed tools capable of defeating counterattacks, but German armor was evolving. Panther tanks' sloped frontal armor could deflect even improved M6A3 rockets at anything except point-blank range. Tigers remained nearly impervious from frontal aspects. King Tigers, introduced in late 1944, were essentially immune to bazooka fire except at rear. American soldiers adapted tactics accordingly. Teams worked in coordination, with riflemen suppressing enemy infantry while bazooka gunners maneuvered for side shots. Artillery and mortar fire forced German tanks to button up, closing hatches and limiting visibility, making them vulnerable to close approach. Tank destroyers and Sherman tanks drew German armor into positions where bazooka teams waited in ambush. The tank transformation was complete. In 2 years, the bazooka evolved from experiment to tactical cornerstone. More importantly, it shattered German assumptions about armored superiority. Wehrmacht panzer forces, seemingly invincible conquerors of Europe, approached combat with fear rather than confidence. German response of building progressively heavier tanks actually worsened their strategic situation. The Panther, initially conceived as 35 tons, grew to 45 tons as designers added armor against shaped charges. The King Tiger reached 70 tons, collapsing bridges and proving nearly unrecoverable when disabled. These super-heavy tanks were mechanical disasters, consuming enormous resources while offering marginal combat advantages. Meanwhile, American doctrine maximized available resources. Infantry and tanks coordinated tactics, with Shermans drawing German armor into kill zones where bazooka teams waited. Artillery suppressed German infantry, allowing bazooka operators to approach enemy tanks. The weapon transformed American soldiers from victims of mechanized warfare to hunters who anticipated engaging enemy armor. Veterans recalled the psychological shift vividly. Before Sicily, German tanks caused panic among inexperienced troops. After Sicily, when squads possessed bazookas and training in their use, American infantry looked forward to engaging enemy armor. They knew they could kill tanks. That confidence fundamentally changed battlefield dynamics in ways no statistics could fully capture. The weapon's success inspired further innovation. If portable rockets could destroy tanks, what else became possible? Development began on recoilless rifles, offering similar capability with different advantages. Research into guided missiles accelerated. The bazooka opened new warfare possibilities, where technology and mass production trumped individual valor or traditional military excellence. German military theorists acknowledged uncomfortable realities in classified assessments. The Wehrmacht, which had revolutionized warfare during the 1930s, was being defeated by industrial democracy. The bazooka embodied this truth. A mass-produced weapon, simple enough for any citizen soldier to operate, was negating years of tactical development and armor innovation. Production records reveal industrial impact. Factories without military experience successfully manufactured bazooka components. The weapon's simplicity allowed distributed production across numerous contractors. General Electric produced approximately 91.6% of all bazookas, but smaller firms contributed significantly. Cheney Bigelow Wire. Works of Springfield, Massachusetts manufactured approximately 40,000 M9A. One launchers under contracts, worth over $1,800,000, winning the Army-Navy E award 3 times during World War II. Rocket production proved even more impressive. 15,630,000 rounds were manufactured by war's end, including high-explosive anti-tank, practice, and smoke variants. This represented industrial capacity Germany simply couldn't match, while simultaneously producing tanks, artillery, aircraft, and countless other weapons systems. The bazooka's design made it ideal for rapid training of Allied forces. Free French forces received 11,350 units, becoming the largest foreign operator Soviet forces received approximately 3,000 units through Lend-Lease, though they reportedly held the weapon in low regard compared to their own anti-tank rifles. Brazil received approximately 2,900 units. The United Kingdom received 2,100 units. China received 2,000 units. Canada received approximately 170 units. Even resistance movements received bazookas through covert supply operations. Czechoslovak insurgents received 162 units delivered via airlift during the Slovak national uprising in September through October 1944. These weapons proved decisive in urban fighting against German occupation forces. The weapon's versatility expanded beyond original anti-tank purposes. Soldiers discovered bazookas, cleared buildings effectively, destroyed bunkers, and could even engage low-flying aircraft in desperation. Units competed to acquire extra bazookas beyond authorized allocations. The weapon symbolized American adaptability, taking available technology and employing it creatively beyond intended purposes. Contrast with German weapons proved stark. The Panzerfaust, Germany's disposable anti-tank weapon, was single-shot with limited range, requiring users to approach within 30 to 60 meters of enemy armor. The Panzerschreck, while more capable than the bazooka, was heavier, more cumbersome, and had massive backblast revealing positions. Firepower and sustainability nearly perfectly for infantry use. By late 1944, the bazooka evolved beyond anti-tank roles into universal problem solver. Machine gun nest, bazooka. Sniper position, bazooka. Roadblock, bazooka. The weapon's reliability and effectiveness made it the first choice for numerous tactical situations where portable explosive firepower was needed. The human dimension appeared in countless personal accounts from both sides. Young Americans never imagining they would fight tanks became confident hunters. Farm boys from Iowa, factory workers from Detroit, students from universities across America all became tank killers with minimal training. Military heroism was democratized in ways previous wars never achieved. German memoirs consistently cite the bazooka as the most psychologically impactful weapon they faced. Commanders feeling invincible during Poland's conquest described constant fear in Italy and France. Knowledge that any American soldier might carry tank-killing weapons created perpetual anxiety impossible to overcome through training or doctrine. One particularly revealing account comes from a German Panther commander captured near Aachen in October 1944. During interrogation, he stated that American tanks were dangerous but predictable. American artillery was devastating but could be endured in prepared positions. American air power was terrifying but weather-dependent. But American infantry with their tube rockets were everywhere, always, waiting. You could never relax, he explained. Every advance might be your last. Every building might hide death. Sleep was impossible, knowing that at any moment, rockets might come through darkness into your position. This testimony validates the bazooka's transformative impact beyond measurable statistics. The weapon didn't need to destroy every German tank. It merely needed to make every German tanker afraid. That fear degraded combat effectiveness more than actual losses ever could. Pacific theater effectiveness, while less celebrated in popular histories, proved even more decisive against Japanese forces. Japanese tanks featured thinner armor than German vehicles, making them helpless against bazooka fire. Type 95 Hargo light tanks, with armor measuring just 6 to 14 millimeters, could be penetrated by standard rifle fire. Bazooka rockets went through them like tissue paper. Marines destroyed tanks, bunkers, and caves with devastating efficiency throughout island campaigns. On Iwo Jima and Okinawa, bazooka teams worked closely with flamethrower units. Rockets blew open fortified positions that flamethrowers then cleared. White phosphorus rockets proved particularly effective against caves, as burning phosphorus created toxic smoke, forcing defenders into the open where they could be engaged by riflemen. The Pacific's climate posed unique challenges that tested the bazooka's design limits. Heat and humidity wreaked havoc. on electrical systems in M1 and M1A1 models. Soldiers experienced frequent misfires in tropical conditions. Rubber grips deteriorated rapidly under constant moisture. Metal components corroded despite protective coatings. The M9's magneto-ignition proved more reliable than earlier battery systems, but problems persisted throughout the Pacific War. Yet despite these difficulties, the weapon's effectiveness against Japanese fortifications made it indispensable. Japanese defensive doctrine emphasized static positions rather than mobile armored warfare. Concrete pillboxes, reinforced caves, and interconnected tunnel systems dominated Pacific battlefields. The bazooka provided portable firepower capable of reducing these positions without requiring soldiers to close to suicidal ranges. American production accelerated relentlessly through 1944 and into 1945. Variants appeared constantly, incorporating lessons learned from every theater. Training programs ensured every replacement arriving at frontline units knew basic operation. The weapon became as fundamental to infantry equipment as rifles. Soldiers expected bazookas to be available, planned tactics around their capabilities, and trusted them to function when needed. By war's end in August 1945, American forces had accumulated vast experience with shoulder-fired rocket launchers. From June 1942 through May 1945, American industry manufactured 476,628 bazookas of all models. The production breakdown revealed continuous improvement. M1 with 112,790 units produced from June 1942 to August 1943. M1. A1 with 59,932 units from July to October 1943. M9 with 26,087 units from October 1943 to June 1944. M9A, one with 277,819 units from June 1944 to May 1945. And M18 with only 500 units produced from April to August 1945, of which only 350 saw combat before Japan's surrender. These numbers represented more than industrial capacity. They embodied philosophical differences between American and German approaches to warfare. Germany sought perfect technical solutions, superior but complex weapons in limited numbers. America sought practical solutions, adequate weapons in overwhelming quantities. The battlefield decisively favored American methodology. German panzer veterans consistently identified the bazooka as the weapon most fundamentally changing their combat experience. Not Allied tanks, which German armor could often defeat in direct engagements. Not artillery, which could be endured in prepared positions. Not air power, which was weather-dependent, but the infantry's rocket launcher. This assessment from experienced crews who had fought across multiple theaters validates the weapon's transformative impact. The legacy extended beyond immediate military applications. The bazooka proved American industry could rapidly develop, mass-produce, and deploy innovation on global scale. This capability established military-industrial dominance persisting through the Cold War and beyond. The lessons learned from bazooka development informed countless subsequent weapons programs. Looking back from the 21st century, the bazooka encapsulates American World War II strengths perfectly. Practical innovation, mass production, democratic distribution of military capability, and effective training combined to create decisive battlefield advantages. Industrial democracy defeated military tradition. Quantity overcame quality when properly applied and supported. German tankers facing bazookas throughout the war learned harsh truths their training never prepared them for. Their magnificent Tigers and Panthers, genuine engineering masterpieces representing years of development, were vulnerable to $18 tubes carried by teenagers barely out of high school. Tactical superiority developed over years of armored warfare experience was negated by simple rockets any infantryman could fire after minimal training. The psychological edge gained from early victories crumbled before weapons, making every infantryman dangerous to armor. The bazooka transformed warfare's fundamental dynamics in ways few single weapons ever achieved. Tanks had restored mobility to World War I's deadlocked battlefields, breaking through trench systems that had consumed millions of lives. Now, infantry possessed weapons destroying tanks at close range. An arms race between armor and anti-armor capabilities began that continues into the present day, with each generation of tank armor spawning new generations of anti-tank weapons. In final analysis, the bazooka succeeded through practical effectiveness multiplied by mass production. The weapon was quintessentially American, simple, reliable, devastatingly effective when employed properly by trained soldiers. In industrial warfare, the nation arming every soldier with effective weapons would inevitably prevail over nations arming few soldiers with perfect weapons. German tank crews entering World War II as masters of revolutionary new warfare discovered by 1943 that they had become targets for mass-produced American weapons operated by minimally trained soldiers. The bazooka demolished not just tanks, but entire conceptions of armored superiority that had dominated military thinking since the 1930s. In that demolition lay fundamental keys to Allied victory. The humble tube that Edward Uhl improvised from scrap metal in spring 1942 changed history's trajectory. It gave American infantry real power to destroy enemy armor, transformed tactical doctrine across all armies, and shattered German assumptions about armored invincibility. The bazooka proved that practical innovation, combined with industrial capacity, could defeat tradition and technical perfection. As World War II ended in August 1945, lessons learned seemed clear to military planners. Future conflicts would require weapons that could be mass-produced, easily operated by citizen soldiers, and widely distributed throughout military forces. Complex systems had their place in arsenals, but wars would ultimately be won by nations arming soldiers with simple, effective weapons in overwhelming numbers. German tankers surviving the war carried permanent memories of the weapon that transformed them from predators to prey. The distinctive sound of bazooka rockets launching remained etched in memory as the sound marking the end of German armored supremacy. That whooshing noise, followed by the impact of shaped charge warheads against armor, became the auditory signature of Wehrmacht defeat. Yet the story didn't end with Germany's surrender in May 1945 or Japan's surrender in August. The bazooka's combat career continued, though not always successfully. 5 years after World War II's conclusion, on June 25, 1950, North Korean forces, equipped with approximately 150 Soviet-supplied T-34-85 tanks, poured across the 38th parallel into South Korea. American forces, caught unprepared and under strength, desperately needed weapons to stop them. South Korean forces possessed 1,958 M9A1 2.36-inch bazookas, their only anti-tank weapons in quantity. They proved critically ineffective against T-34 frontal armor, which measured 90 to 100 millimeters, far exceeding the bazooka's penetration capability. On July 5, 1950, Task Force Smith, consisting of 406 American soldiers, faced approximately 5,000 North Koreans, supported by 33 to 36 T-34-85 tanks. Armed with 6 M9A1 bazookas, they fired 22 rockets with zero effect on advancing armor. The rockets literally bounced off tank armor, sometimes without even scarring the paint. The task force was routed with heavy casualties. This failure demonstrated that the 2.36-inch bazooka, adequate against World War II German armor when properly employed, was obsolete against post-war Soviet tank designs. The T-34's sloped armor and improved metallurgy defeated shaped charge warheads that had threatened Tigers just 5 years earlier. American ordnance engineers had anticipated this problem. Development of a larger 3.5-inch bazooka, designated M20 Super Bazooka, had begun in October 1944 after examining captured German Panzerschrecks. The M20 featured an 88.9mm caliber, matching German weapon diameter. The M28A2 rocket could penetrate 11 inches or 280mm of armor, nearly double the 2.36-inch version's capability. But the M20 saw no combat in World War II. Development came too late, with the war in Europe ending before weapons could deploy to combat units. In the Pacific, where Japanese tanks were lighter and fighting focused on fortifications, the original bazooka remained adequate through Japan's surrender. When North Korean tanks appeared in 1950, the M20 suddenly became critical. On July 8, 1950, just 13 days into the war, General Douglas MacArthur requested urgent shipment of super bazookas. Rock Island Arsenal shipped the first M20s to Korea, accompanied by instructors from Fort Benning. Training manuals were hastily written in just 2 weeks. The first combat use occurred at the Battle of Daejeon on July 20, 1950, when the 24th Infantry Division received initial weapons. The results proved immediate and dramatic. The M20 was credited with destroying 8 T-34 tanks on its first day of combat use. Time magazine reported it knocked out 7 tanks in 7 attempts. Major General William Dean personally used the M20 against T-34s during the battle, engaging 1 tank from a second-story window at less than 10 yards range. He hit the turret ring, set the tank ablaze, and killed the crew. Of 10 T-34s in the city that day, 6 were destroyed by M20s and 2 by artillery. Dean was later awarded the Medal of Honor, the first of the Korean War, for actions including his bazooka use. He was captured after the battle and held as prisoner of war until September 1953, enduring 3 years of brutal captivity. The super bazooka's success in Korea validated the basic concept Skinner and Uhl had pioneered in 1942. Portable rocket launchers, giving infantry organic anti-tank capability, remained fundamental to ground warfare doctrine. Over 750 M20s were produced and shipped to Korea in the war's first year. Throughout the Korean War, from June 1950 to July 1953, the super bazooka proved its worth repeatedly, destroying hundreds of enemy tanks and fortifications. Improved variants appeared, including the M20A1 with better connector mechanisms in 1952 and the M20B1 featuring cast aluminum barrel for weight reduction. But even the M20 approached obsolescence by the 1960s. Tank armor continued improving with composite materials and reactive armor. Shaped charge warheads required ever larger diameters to maintain penetration capability. The reloadable bazooka, requiring 2-man teams and multiple rockets, gave way to single-use, disposable launchers like the M72 LA, light anti-armor weapon. By the mid-1960s, as American forces deployed to Vietnam, the bazooka era was ending. The M72 LAW offered similar capability in a package 1/3 the weight, requiring only 1 soldier with no reloading necessary. The bazooka soldiered on in limited use through Vietnam's early years, particularly against fortified positions, but gradually faded from American arsenals. Yet the concept Skinner and Uhl pioneered in 1942 remains fundamental to modern infantry warfare. Every army on Earth fields shoulder-fired rocket launchers descended from the bazooka, the Swedish AT-4, the Soviet RPG-7, the American M136 AT-4, the German Panzerfaust III, and dozens of modern weapons all trace lineage to that crude tube Uhl spotted on a scrap pile at Aberdeen Proving Ground in spring 1942. The shaped charge warhead remains the primary method for defeating tank armor at infantry ranges, though modern versions feature tandem warheads to defeat reactive armor and sophisticated guidance systems for extended range. The psychological impact proved as important as technical specifications. Before 1942, individual infantrymen were essentially helpless against tanks. The bazooka fundamentally changed that calculation forever. When Leslie Skinner died on November 2, 1978, at age 78 in Clearwater, Florida, obituaries across America credited him with co-inventing one of World War II's most influential weapons. After the war, he continued military service, establishing weapons test facilities and working as consultant for weapons manufacturers until 1970. He then pursued sculpture, channeling creative energy into art. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery with full military honors. Edward Uhl lived longer, passing away on May 9, 2010, at age 92 in Oxford, Maryland, from complications of a stroke. After leaving the Army in 1947 as Lieutenant Colonel, he worked for Glenn L. Martin Company, then Martin Marietta, on guided missile projects. From 1959 to 1961, he served as Vice President of Ryan Aeronautical Company. In 1961, Uhl joined Fairchild Engine and Airplane Company as President, becoming Chairman in 1976. He oversaw transformation from military aircraft manufacturer to aerospace Fortune 500 company before retiring in 1985. In interviews during his final years, Uhl maintained that the bazooka's success came from necessity and direct problem-solving rather than systematic development. "We really had no anti-tank weapon," he told Maryland Cracker Barrel magazine in 2007. "You can't believe how inept our military was at that point in time." That honest assessment carried weight from someone who had witnessed the transformation firsthand. The American military of 1941 was woefully unprepared for modern warfare, lacking basic equipment and tactical doctrine for mechanized combat. By 1945, it was the most powerful military force in human history. Weapons like the bazooka made that transformation possible, giving infantry capabilities that previously required specialized units with heavy equipment. Modern military historians studying the bazooka's development often note what didn't happen. No lengthy committee review process consuming years, no multi-year development program with countless revisions, no extensive field trials before deployment. Just a weapon that worked adequately, manufactured quickly, distributed widely enough to matter when it mattered most. The contrast with contemporary weapons development proves stark. Modern systems require decades from conception to deployment, costing billions of dollars. The bazooka cost perhaps $50 to manufacture in 1942 currency, equivalent to roughly $800 today. Any infantryman could maintain it with basic tools. This accessibility and reliability proved decisive advantages. The crews who manufactured bazookas at General Electric and other contractors were predominantly women, part of the broader phenomenon of women entering the industrial workforce during wartime. Workers knew their efforts supported soldiers fighting overseas. Many had family members in uniform. Quality control took on moral dimensions. Rejection rates for defective components remained remarkably low, despite rushed production schedules, because workers understood that failures meant soldier deaths. The weapon proved that innovation didn't always require years of research and billions of dollars in funding. Sometimes it required an observant engineer walking past a scrap pile, an open-minded supervisor willing to try unconventional approaches, and willingness to accept adequate solutions, rather than demanding perfection. Skinner and Uhl didn't set out to revolutionize warfare. They were solving a practical problem with limited resources and urgent deadlines. That their solution became one of the war's most influential weapons demonstrates that effective solutions don't always require complexity. The bazooka stands as a permanent testament to American innovation under pressure. The weapon wasn't elegant or sophisticated. It certainly wasn't perfect, but it worked adequately, cheaply enough, and quickly enough to help win history's largest war. The soldiers who carried bazookas into combat rarely thought about historical significance or technological innovation. They thought about survival, protecting fellow soldiers, and completing missions. The bazooka was simply a tool for them. But it was a tool that transformed them from victims of mechanized warfare into warriors who could fight back against any enemy. That transformation, repeated hundreds of thousands of times across every theater of World War II, was the bazooka's real legacy. Not the technical specifications documented in ordnance manuals, not the production numbers recorded in factory logs, not even the battlefield kills tallied in after-action reports, but the confidence it gave to individual soldiers, the knowledge that they weren't helpless, the certainty that they could fight and win against even the most formidable enemy weapons. When Edward Uhl walked past that scrap pile at Aberdeen Proving Ground in spring 1942 and spotted a discarded steel tube, he set in motion a chain of events that would change warfare permanently. A prototype tested into the Potomac River, a demonstration with improvised sights, an immediate production order, combat deployment across the globe, millions of rockets fired, thousands of enemy vehicles destroyed, and tens of thousands of American lives saved because infantry finally possessed tools to fight back against armor. All because a young engineer recognized that sometimes the most direct solution is the most effective solution. The bazooka proved that practical innovation and industrial capacity could defeat tradition and technical perfection. It showed that quantity, properly applied and supported, could overcome quality, and it demonstrated that arming every soldier with adequate weapons would always defeat arming few soldiers with perfect weapons. German tank crews who entered World War II as masters of revolutionary warfare discovered they had become targets for mass-produced American innovation. The bazooka demolished not just their tanks, but their entire conception of armored superiority. In that demolition lay the fundamental truth of Allied victory, that industrial democracies mobilizing entire populations would inevitably defeat military aristocracies relying on professional excellence alone. The humble tube that cost $18 to manufacture, that could be operated by any soldier with minimal training, transformed infantry from helpless victims to confident hunters that weapon changed history. It gave American soldiers power they never had before. It shattered German confidence they thought unshakable. And it proved that sometimes the simplest solutions are the most revolutionary. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.